Hey guys, Card Labs here. This is going to be a budget-friendly deck profile on a already budget deck, being for hires. I'm also going to discuss strategy and playstyle, as this is a going first build, which is a little different to the majority of builds I've seen, as they tend to be more focused around going second. But I'll show my reasons for actually choosing to make it a going first build, and we'll talk as well a bit about some budget options and kind of keeping the cost down as much as possible. We are going to be playing a 42 card Monster Mash sort of deck, maxing out on the for hire types as well as names to get the most out of their effects and to make it as easy as possible to go into our Link Monster. So firstly we are playing 3 Seal, 3 Bravo, 3 Helmer, 3 Beat, 3 Domper, 2 Recon, 2 Philo, and then for the bigger monsters we have 2 Raphael, 1 Wiz, 1 Sagitta, and then for the hand traps, triple Ghost Ogre. Then 3 Mayhem for hire, 3 Call by the Grave, as we hate hand traps, 2 Pot of Desires, Pot of Avarice, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Reasoning, 1 for 1, 1 Monster Reborn, and then triple Corner of the Haunted. Each card does and how the archetype works. We have Seal for our level 4s. Seal is the only beast warrior monster we're playing. As I said before, the different types are very important to go into that Link monster. Every for hire card that's level 4 or lower has the ability to special summon another for hire monster from your hand. These are all hard once per turns, so if you recycle them, you can't necessarily use that effect again. As well as that, they have a secondary effect, which is when a for hire monster is special summoned while they're on the field, they will gain an extra effect. So in Seal's case, it means that when another for hire is summoned, we can add a for hire monster from our graveyard back to our hand. This is really good as far as an extender and just keeping cards in our hand live for our negations, which we'll get to later. Then Bravo. Bravo is the only reptile in the deck. He's probably one of the weaker cards. For the most part, we are running as many as possible just for the name and types. His extra effect is he boosts all monsters for hire's attack by 500 points. Then for our level 3s, Helmer, Talisman for hire. He's our only aqua monster in the deck. His secondary effect is that you can discard any card for hire, so that includes your spells and traps, so if you're running them, to then draw a card. It's not normally the best effect because you want to keep those cards in your hand, really. But if you do open up, say, 2 of him, or duplicates of any of the other cards, then it's not so bad because for the most part that duplicate isn't going to do much for you, so you may as well discard it, try and get something better from the deck. Additionally, it can be good to actually set up your graveyard, whether that's a Pot of Avarice or any of your revival cards. Then our other level 3, which is debatably the best card in the deck, Beat Bladeplans for hire. I do love this card's artwork as well. He's essentially a Stratos of the deck. He's your searcher. He's the only warrior in the deck as well. If you don't open him, you can easily enough get him out from Folgo's effects and get your other searchers off to extend that way. Our level 2s. Domper is a beast type. Now this is shared with another card in the deck, which is Recon. His effect is extremely good for the deck and debatably can make him one of the other better cards for the deck. There's his counterpart, Recon. And they're kind of like mirrors of each other, even their attack and defenses are reversed. When you have 2 of these, this is when you can go into your number 64 Xyz monster. Their secondary effects is for Domper, you can destroy a face-up card on the field, and Recon can destroy a face-down card. That's why we're only running 2 Recon, is because we're then running 5 beast types, and when you open duplicates, it's not always great because that can actually stop you going into your Link monster, but we do want that destruction effect because that's kind of one of the main plays of the deck. Philo Messenger for hire. Philo is only level 1. We are running 1 for 1 as well, which is in part why I'm only running 2 Philos. he does share the Winged Beast attribute with one of your boss monsters as well, which you're running a 1 of. So that's also why I'm running 2, because you have a total of 3 Winged Beasts then in the deck. His effect is to reborn another for hire monster from your graveyard in defense position. This is really good, but you also don't always want to open it, because if you aren't able to set up your graveyard, its effect does nothing. You don't make the most out of that monster. We want to kind of try and get every card to get off both of their effects. So it's great if you set up your graveyard, or if you draw this and a card that you can discard to then get them on board, and you can kind of use them as a good extender that way. For the boss monsters, we have Raphael. Raphael is dragon type, the only dragon type in the deck, and we are running 2 of him. His effect is a bit different, in fact, so all the boss monsters in for hires are different, so they don't have the ability to summon additional for hires, and instead of when a monster is summoned to the field while they're on there, their effect is on summon. So when he hits the field, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of other monsters for hire. So if you have 2 other for hires on board as well as this card, you'll excavate 2. But you can pick any card from those and add it to your hand, shuffle the rest back into your deck. It's a solid +1. His other effect is one of your negations. Unfortunately, this is where the archetype would be, I think, a lot better, is if they negated and destroyed. And these, I think, would see a lot more success as a deck, because that would also proc your Link Monsters effect. You want to destroy your opponent's cards, because then that actually lets you draw 3 cards from your deck. We'll get into that effect in a minute, but his effect is you can discard a card for hire, so again that includes the spell and traps if you're running them, to negate the activation of a monster effect. It is hard once per turns, so if you have 2 of them on the field, you're only going to get that 1 negation, which is also why we don't want to run too many of them, but he's also your main beat stick. I'm running 1 Wiz. Wiz is the only spellcaster of the deck, and is a complete 1 of. Wiz is, to a certain extent, situational. It is good. It's very similar to Raphael in the sense you discard a for hire card to negate a spell card, but it's not going to do a lot for you damage wise. It has got a good defense at 2800. Its effect, when it's special summoned, you gain 500 life points equal to the other monsters for hire you have on your field. It can be quite good in time, as you know, that extra couple of thousand life points sometimes can make all the difference. And we are running 1 Sagitta Maverick for hire. This is very similar in the sense that when this is summoned, you burn your opponent for the 500 life points opposed to gaining the 500. So both of them in time can actually put your opponent at quite a deficit to you. It's the Winged Beast boss monster that I mentioned before that shares a type with Philo. Its effect means that it's the only for hire monster that can be targeted by your opponent's card effects. That gives you some nice protection. So as for hand traps, we are running Ghost Ogre. Debatably, it's not one of the best hand traps in the format, but rather than it being used primarily as a hand trap, yes, it is going to be good to stop some of our opponent's cards and plays, but again, our Link Monster has this great effect when we destroy one of our opponent's cards. We basically get to draw 3 cards, and that kind of card advantage you want to make the most of. So that's why I'm running Ghost Ogre. It makes it very easy to then proc that effect, and if you draw this in your opening hand, you can extend into a bit of a different board that doesn't rely on 2 cards to kind of get that destruction effect to go off. That's it for the monsters. So spell cards, Mayhem for hire. We're running this as a 3 of, because what we want to do is have this set with Domper on the field. Same premise, we have our Link Monster and Domper, so then in our opponent's turn we use this to summon any other for hire from our grave. That's going to trigger Domper's effect to destroy a face-up card on the field, or Recon for a face-down card. It can also just be used going first as a good extender, if you're not going to be going into Domper, and give or take, I have been experimenting with some things, trying to make the most of Nightmare Griffin's effect to use it turn 1 and then get to set it again, but I'm yet to work out anything particularly broken with it. Call by the Grave. This deck hates hand traps, you rely heavily on your normal summon, especially if you normal summon beat and you only have one other for hire in your hand. You need to have that card hit the board and search you a third card, otherwise you're dead in the water. So we don't like to get hand trapped, and that's why it's kind of a must, I find, running Called by the Grave in this going first build. Pot of Desires, I'm only running this at 2 because I was running 3 for a while, but I found sometimes you do banish those extra pieces or boss monsters that you need later game, and drawing Desires for Desires, it kind of sucks. So I feel like running 2, that happens a lot less. So that's why I was happy with that, and as well as that, having Pot of Avarice back meant that we could still have a +2 without having to run that risk. Speaking of Pot of Avarice, only running the 1. I did try running 2, but sometimes you open it, or sometimes even 2, in an opening hand and you don't have enough cards to flood your graveyard. It's amazing if you top deck it or draw it off Folgo's effect, and if you do open a decent enough hand, then you're going to easily get those 5 cards into the grave, but it does sometimes happen where you can't get 5 cards in the grave, you're not going to get that plus and it becomes a brick. So I'm running at 1 of at the moment. Reinforcement of the Army, 1 of, just helps us search out beat. Very simple, beat's one of the best cards in the deck, why not run a 4? Reasoning helps you get out of those sticky situations where if you do get hand trapped, we run so many different levels in the deck that we've got a pretty good chance of selling something off it. And a lot of the time people just go generic, level 4, and they don't need to be getting those effects to summon more cards, but then if you get one of your boss monsters off this effect, then it could be huge, so worth running. 1 for 1. I mentioned this before. It's great getting Philo out, and if you discard a boss monster, then you can, essentially bring it back when you summon another for hire. And this actually can save your normal summon. There are some combos I was messing around with where you don't actually even use your normal summon to make your board, and using Seal's effect, you can add Maverick back to your hand if it's the card so you discarded off this. And then use your normal summon as a tribute summon, or just use your normal summon to extend further. So this is amazing. 1 Monster Reborn, obvious is obvious really. I mean, it reborns a card, it's a great extender. And then Triple Call of the Haunted, this was again very much like Mayhem. It's going to help you bring back that card to trigger off Domper's effect. As for the main deck, I mean, the core for hires, you can probably get for around about £10 to £15. Don't go getting ripped off with some listings that you might find on eBay and such either. If you can get the singles at pennies, you can trade with friends, or actually even if you have a friend who owns the deck, you can buy it off. Or just look for a good deal online or on eBay. Then you can get the core quite cheap, but make sure it's got all the key cards in there. You do see a lot of listings which are missing things like Beat, for example. They've also been reprinted in common, I think, now as well, most of the cards, so that helps. As far as the extra deck goes, I'm running 2 Folgos because I have 2. You could quite happily run 3. This deck, it can use the extra deck quite a lot because it's so spammable onto the board. It's just a case for the main plays that this deck is trying to do on a budget. Doesn't really require a lot, but you can pretty much run whatever link monsters you like, just as long as you're running at least 2 Folgo. Effect of Folgo, it requires 3 different types of monsters to make, hence why we're running as many of the for hire monsters as possible for the most part. Then when it's link summoned, it lets you special summon 1 card from the deck, 1 for hire monster in defense position, so that's also going to get you a +1. That lets you essentially tutor out from the deck Beat or Philo, or one of your boss monsters, or a Domper. Those tend to be the best targets depending on what you've opened. It can't be used as a link material, which is unfortunate, otherwise that would also raise the ceiling of the deck a lot more. The reason we are playing this variant of the build is because we want this card's second effect to go off, which is if one of your opponent's cards is destroyed, then you can draw a card, and if you control, I believe it's 3 for hires with different names. Bring it up a little closer. If you control 3 or more monsters for hire with different names, which does include this card, so this card and 2 others, and this is going to bring you out 1 for free anyway, then you can draw 2 additional cards. That is a hard once per turn, but that means that you get to draw 3 cards on your opponent's turn. Most combos with this end with at least 1 for hire in hand, and you should have a negate on board so you can discard that card, or if you proc the Domper earlier to bring back a card and blow up something, you're going to get to draw 3 cards. Likelihood is, because there's so many of them, you're going to draw some for hire cards to sort of keep your negations live. So that's why we run that. So I use your Skull Dread. I'm running as a one-off. It's actually quite cheap now. It can help unbrick some really dead hands and actually make something happen on your first turn. So that's why I quite like it as a one-off, because of the free special summon and the draw 4, put back 3 effect. Number 64, running 2 of these. Again, it's that rank 2, so when you're left with those 2 level 2 monsters on board, especially not in your first turn, going second or later game, they can make this. You detach a material from it to then special summon a token. That's going to match whichever monster on the field has the highest attack, which is great for just crashing into things. And additionally, as long as I believe it is Beast, so a quick look, Beast type monster is on the field, this card can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. And obviously the token is a Beast type. Obviously it doesn't include itself, but you also have all of your other level 2 Beast type monsters. Then I'm running a small Utopia package, 39 Utopia and Utopia the Lightning. For the most part, a lot of these cards can be whatever you like. My suggestion, because this is still about a £5 card, if you don't want to spend that much on something that sort of rarely comes up, my suggestion to replace it would be Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, because this is cheap and this is actually an awesome card and can give you a nice big beat stick. Abyss Dweller, generic, good, level 4, rank 4 even. Baguska, again, bricky hands, helps just stall out your opponent. Tornado Dragon, because back row can be a bit of a problem sometimes for some decks, so it's there, it's free. And then Castell, it's just another generically good rank 4. You probably should run some rank 3s in here as well. This is just kind of what I had on hand and what I could chuck into the deck, but you can pretty much fill all of these with slots with whatever the hell you like. And then I decided to run a couple of the Nightmares, Phoenix and Cerberus, Griffin. As I said, I was messing around with Griffin, trying to do some plays, bringing back the Mayhem for Hire, so allow you to extend on your turn and then still set it to proc Dumper's effect, and the effect of having linked monsters, or the only monsters that can activate their effects, can be quite good. It's just I need to do some more real world testing to see what sort of decks are out there where this is actually a really good play and where it's just a waste of resources. Unicorn is actually quite expensive as well for what the card is. It's about £6 or so, I think. You can sometimes pick them up a little bit cheaper, but again, for what it does in this deck, for the most part, it's nice to have there, but I wouldn't necessarily go picking it up specifically for this deck. It doesn't by any means make it that brilliantly, and to be fair, it's one of the better cards to make off IP Masquerena. That's a £35 card, we're not running that. Honourable mention went to Dark Rebellion to replace Utopia. Another good one is Link Karibo, that you could choose to run just to link off Philo, and helps give you some protection as well when you're going first and then somebody tries to OTK you, so that can come up and can be quite. So as for the combo tutorial, this deck does rely a little bit more off some of the luck of the draw with cards like Raphael and what other extenders you get in hand. They can allow you to push much better boards, but this is probably the most simple and consistent board you can do, because all it requires is any 2 for hire monsters, because we're not going to even use their effects other than the summoning. Beat, Domper, or Raphael, or one of your boss monsters. Beat's probably the simplest one to start with, but pretty much any of those will give you something. And then either a revival card, being Mayhem for Hire, Call of the Haunted, or if you draw into one of your Ghost Ogres, it actually makes the combo a lot more self-contained, because you're not relying on 2 cards being this and Domper as a destroyer card. You need the 1, and obviously we start with 5 cards, so 1 blank card to make this a completely self-contained combo. Starting off, like with most of our plays, we're going to, there's only one matter for this combo, but they will matter for your extended combos. Normal summon, beat, place on higher, uses effect, special summon another for higher, proccing his effect to then add Raphael from our deck to our hand. We're then going to summon our other for higher in hand using Seal's effect. We now have 3 different types on board, so we're going to use these 3 for a link summon into our link monster Folgo. On summon, Folgo's effect is going to proc, which is going to special summon Domper from the deck, and then we're going to use Domper's effect to special summon Raphael. We have 2 monsters on the board, so we would then excavate 2 cards, pick one, add it to hand. So that's going to get you another card. We're going to keep it self-contained and blank. Then our Mayhem for hire, we're going to set that, leaving us with 2 cards in hand. What this now means is if any of these 2 cards are for hires, then Raphael's negate effect is live, which more than likely you're going to draw into a for hire anyway. As well as that, when we activate on our opponent's turn Mayhem for hire, we special summon back. Really don't care which one, so let's just say Seal. In defense mode, proc Domper's effect, you destroy one of their cards, and we have more than 3 different for hires, so we get to then draw 3 cards. Now that then ends up giving you 5 cards in hand, so card advantage ends up being really good. And again, even if you didn't have a for hire in hand to activate Raphael's effect, now you more than likely do. You'd be very unlucky not to draw off it. This is only a simple self-contained board. There are plenty of other boards where if you can, I'm sure I saw one earlier, bring back the whiz or end on a whiz, so you can easily have your 2 negations, or this can be Sagitta to help protect your for hires. There's a whole variety of combos, but this is just a very simple self-contained one. Right, that concludes today's video. I may play around with a danger version of this deck, so let me know if you want to see that or any other variants. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content, as that really helps out a new channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.